Hi friends, this is a case of rabies, and here
But once those symptoms develop, that virus has made its way into your brain.
You're going to wake up in the morning, you might have a fever. You might have some aches and pains. You just may not want to get out of bed.
I've seen rabid dogs before, and it's frightening. This is what it's all about, finding these dogs.
Rabies is one of the most terrifying diseases to ever exist, and before the invention of vaccines, it was certainly the most feared one. Let's dive in and find out more about this shocking illness. The history of rabies. The origin of rabies is a fascinating and somewhat eerie tale that dates back to ancient times. According to historical records, rabies has been around for over 4,000 years and has been mentioned in many ancient texts, including the Talmud and the Epic of Gilgamesh. One of the earliest recorded cases of rabies was in 2300 BC in ancient Mesopotamia, where it was believed that dogs infected with the disease were possessed by demons. In fact, the word rabies comes from the Latin word rabire, which means to rave, reflecting the belief that people infected with rabies would become crazed and violent. Many myths about rabies spread over time. In Greek mythology, the god Apollo was said to have sent a plague of rabies to punish the people of Delos. In medieval Europe, rabies was often associated with demonic possession, and people believed that those infected with the virus were possessed by evil spirits. This led to the practice of exorcism, in which priests would attempt to drive out the supposed demons by performing rituals and incantations. Over time, rabies spread throughout the world, with recorded outbreaks in Europe, Africa, and Asia. In Europe, rabies was associated with wolves, and in the 17th and 18th centuries, wolf populations were culled in an attempt to control the disease.
Verbally to your family how scared you are, how awful it is, and how you know you're going to die.
And it doesn't just randomly wreck those thinking parts, it changes them in a specific way. But once those symptoms develop, that virus has made its way into your brain.
hi friends, this is a case of rabies, and here then you can see the violent response in the face of nose. So when the air is blown on the face, it produces the severe diaphragmatic water. The condition is known as hydrophobic.
In India, where rabies is still a major problem today, the disease was associated with dogs, and it wasn't until the 1960s that a nationwide vaccination program was initiated to control the spread of the disease. It wasn't until the 1800s that French scientist Louis Pasteur made a major breakthrough in the understanding and treatment of rabies. Pasteur had already made significant contributions to microbiology, including the discovery of the germ theory of disease and the development of the first vaccines for anthrax and chicken cholera. Pasteur's work on rabies began in 1885, when a young boy named Joseph Meister was brought to him for treatment. Meister had been bitten by a rabid dog and was in danger of developing the disease. At the time, there was no effective treatment for rabies, and the disease was almost always fatal. Pasteur developed a vaccine for the disease, which he tested on a series of dogs. The vaccine was made from a weakened strain of the virus, which Pasteur had been able to isolate in the lab. By inoculating the dogs with the weakened virus, Pasteur was able to stimulate their immune systems to produce antibodies that could fight off the disease. Once he had established the safety and efficacy of the vaccine in dogs, Pasteur decided to try it on humans. He injected Meister with the vaccine, and to everyone's relief, the boy did not develop rabies. Meister went on to live a long and healthy life, and Pasteur's vaccine went on to save countless lives. Until Louis Pasteur developed the rabies vaccine, vaccines had referred only to the cowpox inoculation for smallpox. His procedure was originally called Pasteur's treatment, but Pasteur decided to honor the 18th century virology pioneer Edward Jenner, who publicized the cure for smallpox, and give these artificially weakened diseases the generic name of vaccines. This discovery changed the world. Despite our understanding of the disease today, rabies remains a serious threat in many parts of the world, particularly in developing countries where vaccination programs are not widely available. In some cultures, rabies is still seen as a supernatural affliction, with traditional healers using everything from herbs to animal sacrifices to try to cure those infected. How does rabies function? The rabies virus is a deadly pathogen that attacks the central nervous system of its host, causing a range of symptoms that can ultimately lead to one's demise. The virus is transmitted through the saliva of infected animals, usually through a bite or scratch, and once it enters the body, it quickly spreads to the brain and spinal cord. This deadly little virus belongs to a family of viruses called Rhabdiviridae, which also includes viruses that cause illnesses such as vesicular stomatitis and Ebola. The virus is shaped like a bullet. Once it enters the body, it begins to replicate and spread rapidly. The virus travels along the nerves to the spinal cord and brain, where it begins to cause damage to the central nervous system. The virus attacks the cells of the nervous system, causing inflammation and swelling that can lead to severe neurological symptoms.
You're going to wake up in the morning, you might have a fever. You might have some aches and pains. You just may not want to get out of bed. You bought the farm, it's over, it's too late.
Animal is usually a change in behavior. It is important to remember that while many health conditions will cause know that in some cases there is a low probability that an animal involved in a biting incident actually had rabies.
One of the hallmark symptoms of rabies is hydrophobia, or fear of water. This is caused by the virus affecting the part of the brain that controls swallowing, making it difficult and painful for the infected person or animal to drink water. Other symptoms of rabies include fever, headache, confusion, and seizures. The rabies virus also causes changes in behavior in infected animals, leading to aggression and a tendency to bite or scratch. This is because the virus affects the part of the brain that controls behavior, leading to the characteristic furious form of rabies. In addition to the furious form of rabies, there is also a dumb form of the disease, which is characterized by paralysis and a lack of coordination. This form of rabies is less common than the furious form, but is equally deadly. The rabies virus is almost too smart for the body because it is able to evade the immune system, making it difficult for the body to fight off the infection. The virus has several ways of doing this, including hiding inside nerve cells and using a protein on its surface to block the body's immune response. Once symptoms of rabies develop, the disease is almost always fatal. This is because the virus causes severe damage to the central nervous system, leading to irreversible neurological damage. There is no known cure for rabies, and treatment options are limited to supportive care such as hydration and pain management. Prevention of rabies is the key to avoiding the disease, and vaccination is the most effective way to prevent rabies.
He was bitten by a rabid bat, but about a week ago, her huskies had a similar encounter. This way to the dog fence to feed her two huskies. But when she crouched down here to the corner, she saw the dead.
I knew that my dogs would be healthy. I mean, they were vaccinated.
Symptoms of rabies. The symptoms of rabies can vary depending on the form of the disease, but in most cases, they are severe and can quickly lead to one's demise. One of the most well-known symptoms of rabies is hydrophobia, or fear of water, but in addition to hydrophobia, there are several other symptoms of rabies that can develop as the disease progresses. These include fever, headache, confusion, and seizures. The virus can also cause muscle weakness, particularly in the limbs, which can lead to difficulty walking and eventually paralysis. As the virus continues to spread throughout the central nervous system, the symptoms of rabies become more severe. Infected animals or humans may experience hallucinations, anxiety, and insomnia. They may also become increasingly agitated and aggressive, which can make them a danger to themselves and others. In the later stages of the disease, the virus causes severe neurological damage, which can lead to coma and ultimately one's demise. In most cases, once symptoms of rabies develop, the disease is almost always fatal. Spread of rabies. Rabies is highly infectious and spreads through the saliva of infected animals, usually through a bite or scratch. The virus can infect a wide range of animals, including dogs, cats, bats, raccoons, and foxes, and can also be transmitted to humans through contact with infected animals. The virus is able to spread quickly and efficiently through populations of animals, particularly in areas where vaccination rates are low or where there is a large population of stray or feral animals. Once the virus enters the body, it begins to replicate and spread rapidly, traveling along the nerves to the spinal cord and brain, where it can cause severe neurological symptoms.
This dog had run down the street here and it's bitten 3 massive dogs. I've seen rabid dogs before and it's frightening. This is what it's all about, you know, finding these dogs.
It's a scientific way to vaccinate 70% of the dog population and cut that disease cycle.
Infected animals are often highly contagious and may show a range of symptoms, depending on the form of the disease. In the furious form of rabies, animals may become aggressive and bite or scratch, while in the dumb form, they may become lethargic and uncoordinated. In both cases, infected animals shed their virus in their saliva and can transmit the virus to other animals through bites or scratches. Bats are a particularly common carrier of the rabies virus and are responsible for a large number of human cases of the disease. Because bats are often difficult to detect and may be present in areas where people are not aware of their presence, they transfer the virus more frequently than other creatures. In addition to bats, other wild animals such as raccoons, foxes, and skunks are also common carriers of the virus, and pets such as dogs and cats can also become infected if they come into contact with an infected animal. Myths about rabies. With a disease this deadly, there are bound to be some myths or misconceptions flying around. One common myth some people believe is that you can get rabies from breathing the same air as an infected animal, when in reality, rabies is primarily transmitted through the saliva of infected animals, usually through a bite or scratch. It cannot be spread through the air. Another misconception is that you can always tell if an animal has rabies by its appearance. But really, there is no way to visually determine if an animal has rabies. In fact, many infected animals may appear healthy and show no signs of the disease. In some areas of the world, people still think once you have symptoms of rabies, it's always too late to be treated. And while there is no cure for rabies once symptoms develop, there is an effective vaccine that can prevent the disease if administered soon after exposure. The most popular myth is that only dogs can get rabies, but actually, rabies can affect a wide range of animals, including cats, bats, raccoons, and foxes. In some parts of the world, other animals such as monkeys and even cattle can also be carriers of the virus. That's all for today, folks. We'll see you next time.